Hello and welcome to another episode of Feeding Fatty. This is Roy.
This is Terry.
So we're the podcast that brings you a just chronicling our journey through health. And here lately we've kind of talked a lot more about mindset. We started in the beginning talking a lot about diet, not necessarily being on a diet, just our food intake, and we've talked a lot about exercise and a lot of these things. And then we also talked quite a bit about the mindset portion of all this, trying to tie it all together to lead us to a better point of wellness. And also from time to time we do have professionals in the fields that come on, and today is no different. So Terry, I'm gonna let you introduce Katie.
Yeah, Katie Chapmon is an award-winning registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in bariatric nutrition, GI issues, and hormonal health. And with 10 plus years of hands-on clinical experience for leading medical providers. She's the proud recipient of the 2010 Recognized Young Dietitian of the Year Award and 2018 Excellence in Weight Management Practice Award through the Academy of Nutrition and Diet Dietetics. Is that right?
You got it.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Good. Katie, welcome. Welcome to the show. We're happy to have you.
Thank you both.
Yeah, I was gonna open. We always have pre-show talks, so I was gonna comically kind of open with like, we're gonna welcome the food police on to the show, but I say that tongue in cheek because I know that I know that's kind of unfortunate, a role that you're pushed into, and a lot of times people skew you into that.
No.
But you know what? I think we were, kind of bantering it around, but I was thinking it's more like the dietary Sherpa that, y'all are there to help and lead, to guide, to encourage, to keep us from falling off the side of the mountain. It's always your own journey. If you decide to make that fatal step off to the right and have that big old piece of chocolate fudge cheesecake or, whatever, it's not like you just try to be there to give the good advice. But before we get way far deep into this, tell us a little bit about, kind of what led you here, what got you interested in this, what led you to be a dietitian.
Oh my gosh, such a great question.
So many things.
So many things. Honestly, I did a lot of running. I used to marathon run.
Oh, wow.
Which was a thing I did in my 20s. Among probably other things I did in my 20s. I just noticed the aspect of how I ate and how that affected not only this major kind of piece of like, oh yes, we got to fuel or exercise or fuel what I'm doing in that sense. But when it really, really came down to it, I felt just different, right? I felt like, oh, okay, like I feel better when I eat this way. I don't feel so good when I eat this way. Like my stomach hurts when I eat this way. And so I just was fascinated with how food affected how I felt mentally, physically, and decided to just dive in really deep and become a dietitian with it.
That's a good story because I think we don't give that enough thought. We think about the weight aspect, but we don't. And I guess it's as I've grown older, I'm really more in tune to how I do feel. And I tell you, sometimes food can, for me, I think I have some food allergies, to be honest, but food for me can almost be like alcohol in giving me a hangover in the morning. And I think it's seems to be carb related, or I'll say when we have gone to the local Mexican food restaurant and maybe have a margarita, they put that really sweet syrup in it and then have some chips. It's like the next morning, it takes me till maybe noon just to get out from under that fog. I just feel like my head is just very clogged and stopped up. So anyway, I think there's so much to that.
Completely. And I know I sometimes I'll feel that way too. Like if something's more like fried, I
Mhm.
definitely feel that way. I'm originally from Kentucky, and so I always kind of think like
Fried.
fried,
Everything.
covered, and smothered.
Yeah.
Right? If those are the terms, I'm usually not going to feel so well afterwards.
Right. Right. And it's just hard for us to be our best self, not only with
Yeah.
the weight aspect and how we feel physically, but also if you have that little, the way it makes you feel mentally processed. Because I'll tell you, when I feel like that, I probably don't make as clear don't think about things clearly. But there's also the aspect of, probably being short and not really being as empathetic as you can be when you don't feel like you're at the top of your game.
Yeah. Yeah. My sleep gets off too. And I know if my
Oh,
sleep is off,
Yeah.
then I don't think as clearly or approach things as clearly or nicely, all
right,
the
right.
above. So we're
Brain
speaking
fog,
the same
just
language.
just a big brain fog.
Hmm.
And it's hard for people. I mean, everybody knows, you think that everybody knows what's good for them health wise as far as eating and everything, but people don't know what to put together. They don't know what they're doing. And then it's like, oh, wait, I've been doing this, I ate this way healthily for a couple of meals, and then I need a treat.
Hey,
I need a
that,
treat.
that sounds like
Oh,
you sound
wait,
like you're calling me out
no,
there.
no, I'm thinking it for me, but
Okay.
if the shoe fits.
Yeah, right. She came home from the grocery store the other day, and like I'm going through these bags and lettuce, celery. I'm like, okay, did the snack fall off in here somewhere?
Yeah, and he didn't help me unpack any of it after he found out there was nothing in there good for him. I mean,
But it's
for,
it's hard, and I don't know why. Maybe you can give us some insight into
Sure.
our feelings around food. But I
Mm.
grew up mainly, mom tried to give me vegetables. I'm not going to say she didn't, but mainly meat, potatoes, corn. All the things that probably the vegetables that aren't the best for us, and then but no greens. I'm just maybe peas, but I'm not a fan. And it's just hard to eat. I'm just telling you right straight up. It's just hard. And
Yeah.
God bless Terry. She tries to disguise them and season it up. And, we bake
smoothies,
them and do this and we do that.
smoothies.
But, at the end of the day, it's still a piece of broccoli.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I hear that all the time too. So listen, you're not alone. And I think, when you look at just kind of how we grew up and just really looking at someone's history with food,
Yeah.
our brain creates these really strong connections with just food in particular. And I always think like everyone has a relationship with food. It just looks different for each person,
Right.
Right.
right? So it, for you, without that like very young exposure of different vegetables,
Yeah.
or I know that some people have said like, oh, okay, like how they were made as a kid was like out of the can, or they were
Yeah.
mushy or gross or whatever. You have that very strong connection, and
Right.
that's where that like kind of concretes in.
Yeah.
So as you get older and as you're potentially trying to work out of it, it's hard. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm older. I know these things are good for me. Let me just, yep, no problem. You have these
Right.
really strong connections of like, oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I have a good feeling around this.
Yeah, and then the other thing I think what you're saying about that relationship with food is it's always been, well, it's not just emotional, but it's everything. Everything is based around food, emotion, social. Because
Mhm.
we always jokingly say that we used to come home from having a bad day. It's like, oh, it was tough. Well, let's get something to eat, or
Yeah.
a big success. Woohoo! It went. This happened. It's like awesome. Let's go celebrate.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
we've even talked about like my big addiction is probably ice cream. And
Sure.
yeah, we talked about it a little bit before, but it's mainly like, some of the, I guess it's those, that was a celebration because I had two of my grandparents that was very close with my grandpas, and then my dad. And so, like we go work in the yard or go, I'd go help them with the task when I was a little kid. And I think now thinking back, I think I was kind of an excuse for them to go get an ice cream. But whenever we do something, be like,
Right.
hey, let's run up to the drugstore and let's go get us a banana split. And so
Mhm.
it was that good. It was a treat, number one, but it was also the social time that you spent with your loved ones.
Mhm.
And it's still, even at this age, it's still a fond memory. I told Terry not long ago, I could still remember the Dairy Queen where me and Dad used to go in the afternoon, the jukebox, the song that was on the jukebox, just the whole atmosphere,
Mhm.
when I was probably 8, 9, 10 years old, but it just sticks with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly, exactly. Those like elated feelings and those feel good feelings,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then trying to navigate that now of going like, oh, okay, wait, that's pretty
Yeah.
strong. Like that's the thing I go to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and it takes time to kind of unravel that. Like I feel like it's kind of like, just imagine like a sweater and you're unraveling kind of these things that have been really deeply kind of stitched and embedded.
Yeah.
And I know as much as people potentially want to just have this like light switch moment of like, yep, nope, I'm not going to have it. No problem. I'm like, ooh,
Right.
doesn't quite work like a light switch. And we have to take time to actually unravel and kind of reestablish new feelings with that particular food, such as ice cream, or establish new feelings with also something else.
So we have to make
Yeah.
a new sweater or a pair of mittens or a
Exactly.
cap or something.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
don't come at me and say, "Oh, that is so awesome that you did. Let's celebrate with some cauliflower."
Yeah. No, no, but
Yeah.
also like, let's see, what else do we want to celebrate with that maybe isn't even food,
Right. Yeah.
you know? I
Yep.
don't know.
No, that's something
Oh yeah,
we talk about that
we do.
frequently, is that, when we feel that, is like, hey, it's a great time to go for a walk, or,
Uh-huh.
to try to change that from, because that's the other miracle about me and exercise is, and I know that with weight, it's, calories in, calories out, basically. And it's hard to, if you go eat a banana split, it's hard to, go on a treadmill and walk that off in a reasonable time.
Yeah.
I get all that, but the thing about it is, if I am out exercising, that means that I am not somewhere somewhere eating. And so it's kind of a good trade-off for me, because it keeps me from eating, but it's also good for the heart and lungs, for our other body functions too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and just even approaching it, we get in our heads of like the can't and the no. And I don't know about you. If someone says no or you can't do this, I'm like, oh, I'm doing it. Like,
All
Exactly.
over
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
It's like we were talking earlier about, we mentioned the hormonal aspect of it,
yeah,
like
yeah.
as a woman, I just get defensive if a dude tries to blame it on hormones.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just
But guys have it too. That's
I
what you
just
said,
I
guys.
just
That's right. We all have hormones.
I
And
just said
so,
H word a little too loud a while
That's
ago.
right.
uh-huh. Well, I mean, and that's why when I say hormonal health, I think everyone thinks female.
Yeah.
But I do see that just looking at all of this full circle, and even just talking about weight, I try to dive in just one level, probably 10 levels deeper, because whenever I look at weight, I sometimes like, yes, it is the actions to support it,
Right.
but also at the same time, what is our body systems doing? So, do we need to look at kind of how we're digesting and processing? Because if that's off, that is going to affect how your body communicates about weight or weight loss or weight gain or whatever we're trying to do. Same with hormones too, and that's across the board. So I do have not just females that might need to take a look at hormonal health with me.
So
Well,
how do you identify that? How do you identify those things?
Yeah, so I'll say the digestion part is probably easier to really understand, because typically I see that someone will say like, "Oh, I'm bloated all the time," or "I have gas," or even like acid reflux or stomach pains. And then then you start kind of questioning like, is this all the time? Is this after you eat? How long after you eat? So it determines what part is happening in that digestive tract. And then I do some functional microbiome testing too. So just kind of some interesting. It's at home. I always tell people, I'm like, it's at home, but it helps to look at someone's just what's the lay of the land inside there. So do we have some not so awesome bacteria that's supposed to be there but is growing more rapidly or more
yeah,
than the awesome stuff?
yeah.
So then we have this really big imbalance, and that affects how our nutrients are broken down and absorbed. So if we're not feeling our bodies, how do our bodies know that it's safe to lose weight? So,
Interesting. Yeah.
right? Big picture
Ah,
here.
Yeah, no,
okay.
that's good.
Well, yeah, that
You
makes a
know,
lot of
yeah,
sense.
because our bodies are, I think they're smarter than we give them credit for, and they try to adjust no matter what we're putting in
Yeah.
there. They're like, it's survival. Our body thinks about our survival, even sometimes maybe when we're not. But
Yeah.
I think that brings up a good point, though. Something that we've talked very little about, but I think more and more has come to light with gut health and
Yeah.
making sure, because I'll let you explain it more, but really, I don't think people understand a lot of our stuff starts there.
A ton of our stuff
Yeah.
starts
Yeah.
starts
Yeah.
there. Absolutely. So as we're learning more about gut health, which I feel is just, it's a fascinating subject that has gotten more mainstream and probably the past 5 to 10 years. And so our gut is, they're the gatekeeper. I always think they're like the bouncer to the club. I have a million ways of explaining
Yeah.
this,
I love it.
Yeah.
but it helps to, I think, for many of the scientific or more complex topics, if we can make it understandable, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So if we think like the gut is the bouncer to our club, and we want our gut lining to be really discerning. We want the velvet rope. we want to be like, you're allowed in. Oh, we, you're not the type of thing we need to allow
Yeah.
it. And so as how we eat kind of supports how that discerning that bouncer is going to be. So it supports our nice, normal, kind of commensal is the proper term, flora. So that's like the awesome bacteria. And, but depending on how we eat, we could also support the not so awesome bacteria, which is supposed to be there, but they're kind of the troublemakers. So, so as maybe the troublemakers are kind of outgrowing more,
Mm.
then all of a sudden they are kind of pushing in and giving that bouncer a harder time. And so that bouncer at some point is going to cave. It's just like, I've been trying the hardest, but kind of going to cave or be like, oh, okay, you can kind of come in. And so that makes that kind of let's say scientifically called the gut lining permeability. So that allows that permeability to just be looser or weaker.
Hmm.
So we just don't have that discerning. So again, that just like, I can say that it's kind of full circle with that gut health is sometimes people will get symptoms. So they'll just not feel good sometimes when they eat, or not feel good when they eat healthy. That's the thing that a lot of times people get confused by. They'll be like, oh gosh, when I'm eating healthy, when I'm eating those vegetables, I don't feel as good as when I don't eat those vegetables. And that doesn't make sense. And that's in part where I'll dive in and be like, oh, we need to actually support your gut first in order to then also support then health. There's a lot to this.
Well, and I guess the, kind of going off that scenario is that when we eat unhealthy enough, we kind of do that overwhelm the bouncer where really there's just no choice. It's just kind of overrun.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so can we get to a point when we eat healthy for years and years and years and years, that does our body kind of flip? Like you were saying, some people eat healthy. Does our body kind of flip and now it thinks that it's used to the unhealthy and that's what it accepts, where the healthy, you kind of have to go back and I guess retrain it in some manner to kind of accept it and feel better?
Yeah, that's a great question. A couple of things I usually need to do. I usually need to strengthen that kind of gut lining, so build muscles on that bouncer. And then that's kind of first and foremost, and then be able to start switching over how someone's eating.
Okay.
So there's kind of a couple steps that go along with this. And then also if something's overgrown, I also need to help balance that out. And I can usually do that with a combination of some herbal supplements and probiotics. And I get picky about which ones I'm going to use depending on what someone has going on. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and we heard not long ago too, because we've both heard of the probiotics, but Terry, you can help me here. Maybe it was like a
Prebiotics?
Prebiotic
Yeah.
that you have to kind of like warm it up to get it to, I guess, to receive the probiotics in the manner that you really want it to.
Yeah. Terry, I don't want to cut you off. I'm like, I can definitely break that one down.
Yes.
Okay. So, we have both. We have prebiotics, we have probiotics. So prebiotics are basically the food for your awesome bacteria. So they are helping that awesome stuff that's in there. It is just helping to build that up. Probiotics, which there's a ton out there, they're not all the same because they have different strains of bacteria, but probiotics are adding bacteria strains to that like dynamic. So it's adding new people to the party. So for some people, they need to have that prebiotic because they have some awesome stuff going on in there. And we just need to actually, give it some strength, give it some food and help that grow. And then for some people with probiotics, they'll need those because they need more of a variety of bacteria in their digestive tracts.
Okay. So is it, I'm sorry.
No,
it has to kind of be customizable is basically what you're saying as far as each individual person.
If someone there's some really great just kind of, let's say like probiotics and prebiotics that are just like really nice general ones that kind of include a variety. If someone doesn't have any like gut things going on, or they can, maybe try this and be like, well, let me try just doing a nice general one. Absolutely, that can work for people. But if someone is having like an actual GI issue, digestive issue, where they're just like, it feels like a hot mess down there, then and they're suffering from like bloating, gas, stomach pain, then honestly, I'm like, oh, we need to take a really more particular and deeper dive into that. So I would say there's parts that are definitely customizable, especially if there's an issue going on. If someone's just like, no, there's not really an issue, but I just want to make sure that like things are even keeled, then there's definitely general, just balanced ones that you can do to help just support.
So
Okay.
that also brings up something that I've become more and more fascinated with is fasting, because we have had some guests on and read some evidence that fasting is good in a way that it gives our body a break from the constant digesting, in which back in the day we had this guy that was a local fitness guru, and he was the 6 meals a day. I mean, with this guy, it was constant eating, but you were in the gym. It was a balance. It was, chicken and some rice and, broccoli. That was the main staples of it. But, the thing is, was eating a little bit smaller, but eating all the time. So then now we're talking about fasting, and it in theory, I get that. It sounds good. But then when was it, like last week, a couple weeks ago, then we read some more evidence that said, well, maybe not so much, especially like diabetics, because it can slow down your metabolism. It can do this. And, and I haven't been shy about saying, I'm a type 2 diabetic. And here lately, I've been struggling more and more with my blood sugar than what I have in the past. And it's due to my eating. It's due to eating, and it's due to being sedentary. I think coming through, this last year, maybe not the whole, maybe the last 6 to 8 months, I've been much more sedentary than ever in my life. So anyway, I know we could probably do 5 episodes just on that topic. And I hate to do that to guests, is, just say like, yeah, give us this high level, because it's not always that simple, but I'm going to let you try to address that in the best way that you can.
Ooh,
Whichever
okay.
part of that you want to address. That was a lot.
Ooh, okay, got my work cut out for me. But
Yeah.
let me try to simplify two sides of this coin. So, right, when just looking at evidence. So, and let's say like they're typically with most things, there's evidence that's how we learn and we advance, and we're like, let's try this on this and put it in this scenario, see how things are, so we learn more things.
Right.
So where I come into play on fasting is, and let's just say also, I'm going to use the general term diet. I look at diet as how someone eats, but we definitely always have a trend of whatever the new diet is for the year. And I always try to figure that out and take bets on it before it comes out, because there's always something that's going to come out. And I look at how someone eats as like a fit for what they have going on for them. So when I look at, like, let's say digestion or digestive health, and this is just a really big, broad example because I'm trying to simplify this. But maybe for someone, I am going to have not necessarily a fast, but I'm going to have a much more direct kind of eating window, because I do need that like digestion rest. And so that eating window, it might be 12 hours, like, which is like, okay, yeah, that's kind of when we're up. Right. So, it's not usually always like a several day fast or anything like that. But on the flip side too, I'm going to look at this on the other way of like diabetes, or let's say, sometimes with people who I have to support thyroid health with, those are particular eating times that we need to support because of their body and their body's communication. So let's say fasting wouldn't necessarily be a great fit in those scenarios, because we need particular fueling at particular times to support those body processes. So that's where you're going to get evidence of like, it's not great for this thing. It could be considered for this thing. And that's why it sometimes gets confusing, or where I'll see people who are like, hey, I've tried all these different diets and they didn't work for me. And I'm like, well, let's see what's going on so we can match the fit
Right.
of what's going on for your body. I'll also mention the emotional aspects too, just because for some people fasting will just ignite that kind of really strong emotional connection for them, in terms of kind of black or white, yes or no. And
Yeah.
it'll make people kind of idolize or want food more. And that's not a safe space either.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to kind of thinking around this fit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that you say eating window. I mean, that sounds much better than
Yeah.
fasting.
Well, and like what I guess that's kind of our approach is we've made some tweaks here and there and some things we try that we don't feel works, and we never take a hard line. Just like, I feel like we have been more plant-based here of late, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean, because we were at a dinner not long ago, and it was a breakfast, and I ordered some bacon, and somebody's like, "Oh my gosh, I thought you were vegan now." I'm like, "No, we're plant-based." It just means that we try to fill most of our diet with plants, and then if we feel like the meat, we can have some. It's not, because again, I think it's that mental. If you say never any
no.
more meat, then it's like, I
Yeah.
want some meat.
All of a
Restricted.
sudden, it's magic. Is it not? Like,
Yeah.
It
But
is.
but for me, and this is maybe more psychological, but like breakfast has always been my meal, because in a former life, I typically had more of a physical day, out working hard and stuff like that. Now, as I've gotten older, it's more at a desk and more sedentary, but still, I've been conditioned that breakfast is my meal. That's the one I really enjoy. The other thing too is we enjoy the weekends, because we used to cook Saturdays and Sundays. We would always cook a big breakfast, and then so when fasting, we were doing like 16 hours. We would eat 6 or 7 at night and go all the way till noon. So we would have a noon meal and a 6 o'clock meal. And it worked most of the time, but there was always still that little nagging, like, ugh, it would be nice to, just have a meal. We tried to even supplement that a little bit with just more of a smoothie instead of having a full blown meal. So I don't know. Uh, I guess while we bring that up is, what is your thought on getting some, nutrition through the smoothies? Good, bad, indifferent, or just again depending on the person and what they're needing? We could say that.
well, so let's say if you're looking at a smoothie, right? I'm going to be like, what's in that smoothie?
Yeah.
Because it could just be, I mean, my goodness, it could just be like
Just
fruit and honey, and
Yeah,
let's just see what we're going to add into it,
yeah,
right? Or it could be like, oh, I don't know, a half cup of fruit and protein powder and
yeah,
2 cups of spinach, like, right? So I think that smoothies, when they are made in a lovely balance that gives you
right, right.
health properties, I'm going to say that they can absolutely work.
Okay.
And so, and I'll be the first one to say that you will see me. I sometimes will have back to back people and on Zoom with them. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's during my it's lunchtime. And so how am I going to do this? And so sometimes that's just how I'll get in my fueling,
Yeah.
because of situational. So I think they can be utilized,
Okay.
as long as there's that, like, there's health properties are in there.
Yeah, and I should clarify,
Yeah.
because between me and Terry, when we say smoothie, we know exactly what we're talking about. But I think that's, again, I'll let her jump in, but we try to do the protein powder. She uses usually kale or spinach, maybe a little fruit to sweeten it up, and
or an avocado, or an avocado. And some lately we've been adding omega-3, 6, 9 oil for
Lovely.
brain health also.
Yeah.
But does that do something in addition to brain health? I mean, does that help with digestion or gut health?
Yes. I'm like, oh my gosh, your omegas have been, yay, go Terry.
Yay! I don't know what I did, but good. I knew it would come sometime.
Yeah, your omegas actually, oh my goodness, they help in so many different ways. So they do help definitely support that kind of like gut lining. They do support brain health and kind of keeps our brains really nice and spongy and all that lovely stuff. And then also at the same time too, our heart health too as
Okay.
well.
Heart
So
health.
there's multiple reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a guest
Yeah,
on,
we did.
a friend of the show, Delia McCabe. She's actually from Australia and is into the research, but she was telling us that, we've taken fish oil capsules for so long, but she said that there's research that shows that they have to cook that to such high temperatures that when we take it in this oil form, it's much, I guess the balance is much better and
Much more
much better for us.
beneficial.
So we've been really working that in. And then also, I think you put either we use walnuts, flaxseed, or a little bit of a nut quality in there as well. But we, like you said, we don't live off of them, and I don't ever want to. Again, we always say we're not doctors. See a doctor, a dietitian, a registered dietitian. Find somebody that's a professional that can help. But we don't substitute and say, hey, we're doing smoothies all day. But like you said, if it's a busy day, maybe in the morning we didn't have time to cook, that's a good time. Or if lunch gets crazy, at least trying to
Get
give some
something.
fuel for our
Yeah.
body.
Yeah, no, and that's why I say like I am just as much as of a human as all of us are in this room.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm all like, yep, some days are just crazy. And
Yeah.
you gotta think about it. And if that's how that is working.
Yeah.
And definitely I just look at the balance part of it and just am like, yep, okay, then it can be
Well, because I look
utilized.
at the two alternatives, either not eating, which is never a good choice, or
Nope.
running through the nearest drive-through and getting something that's, overly processed. So with this, we can at least control what we're doing. And I think with the kale or spinach, and then with the mix of the protein powder, I feel like it's a pretty decent. We just have to watch with the fruit for me, especially because that
Yes.
fruit can kind of set me off a little bit. So we just temper that, but usually it's pretty good.
And is there any like she talked a lot, Delia did, she talked a lot about the differences in the processing of supplements. Are there any that you might recommend to look into as far as more of a pure form to help us, like with this omega 369 oil? It's in the refrigerated section, and we're using that, and we kind of cut out the fish oil supplements that we're taking, and now are looking at all the other ones that we're taking too, as far as the way that they're processed.
Yeah, so I think so oftentimes when something's a kind of like a fatty acid, which is what an omega-3 is,
Right.
369.
Yeah.
That whole family. So that is going to be sensitive to heat. Some of your other, let's say, vitamins and minerals, not so sensitive to heat.
Right.
However, gosh, this is a really tough question, Terry, just because when looking at, like, let's say, like, if I'm looking at a iron or I'm looking at a vitamin A, then some of the kind of, let's say, like, format that it's made in might mean something different as far as not only processing but absorption. So iron, if that's a liquid form, that's going to be much less kind of grams of iron. And so with kind of with looking at this, or I should say milligrams of iron, I misspoke my own, knowledge there. But so when looking at the processing, I don't necessarily have a hard rule of thumb unless it's like an oil based. If you look at the pill and it's more of like a liquidy, or it's like a capsule that's liquidy. And so
Yeah.
you're going to see that more with your kind of fat soluble vitamins or fatty acids in that family. Then I'm going to look for something that's like an oil, or they'll call it liposomal typically. And so that's more of an oil base, because those are more sensitive to like the processing and the heat.
Okay.
And probably a good rule of thumb too is the closer you can get to nature, the better, because, at one point they came out and said,
Yeah.
oh, turmeric is a good, something that's good to take. And so,
Mhm.
of course, silly me, I went out and found there was a
Ground.
turmeric pill that I
Yeah.
took for a long time.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, well, it's a spice, so we can buy it, as a spice and cook with it.
Yeah.
So, I would assume that it's always better the closer to the pure form that you can get.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
try to do the turmeric root, and
Yeah.
that really adds a lot of good flavor. I mean, it's
Flavor.
night and day difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then also I'll say this too, is that, let's just like look at like color of like fruits and vegetables. And that's that's kind of naming, right? Like the properties that are in there. And so you're not going to get all the layers of what's going on in there. Polyphenols, you're not going to get that from a pill form.
Yeah.
So that's, I always look at it like that, of like, oh, you're getting vitamin C, but you're also getting polyphenols. You're also getting another level or another layer, or fiber also, which is also going to help that vitamin C. Like there's more with that kind of natural part that you're getting than just that straight vitamin or straight mineral or etc.
And we don't recommend one. There's a couple different apps that we've used in the past, but from my personal opinion, that's always the best, because you would be surprised. I'd been taking some vitamin C and a couple other supplements that my doctor said was okay to take.
Sure.
But then when you really look at the foods that you eat, and when you start eating what I would say is more healthy, especially more greens, now all of a sudden it's like you're getting all of that daily allotment of that. You don't necessarily need to take these supplements, or again, I'll ask that as a question. If you kind of monitor that and make sure you're getting all your daily allotment, then you really don't have to take the supplements.
Right. Supplements are meant to be what they are, to supplement
Yeah.
what you're eating.
Imagine that.
Yeah. That's exactly why I got on so many and so much, was because I knew I had such a poor diet, and that's what my doctor's like. If
Sure.
I'm not going to get you to change your diet, at least let's supplement to make sure you're getting some things to keep you healthy. But
Yeah.
we have transitioned pretty much off of most everything, and we feel like we're getting a pretty good balance in our diet. But this one that we use, man, I tell you, it gets down to some of these micronutrients that it's like, oh, I didn't even know what this was. But the good thing is you can touch it and it'll tell you where you can get it. So that's the other thing, is
Right.
sometimes they give you these obscure vitamins or minerals that you really need, but then it's like, somebody like myself would be, I wouldn't even know where to find one of those if it jumped up and bit me. So,
Right,
that's why
right.
some of these
And it
apps are
does
pretty good, because
sometimes.
it'll point you in the right direction to, eat more of this or that.
Yeah. 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 I mean, definitely I can say that, supplements are meant to be supplemental. They can be helpful and useful, especially if something's low and we need to get that back up, or if we're not getting enough from how we're eating, or we need extra to help kind of just to help, let's say, like our cells or cellular process.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
And again, this is why, we recommend reach out to your doctor, to somebody like Katie, who's a registered dietitian, because, some things counteract if you're on prescription medicine.
Yes.
Sometimes there's
Absolutely.
supplements that will counteract those. And then there's some things you shouldn't commingle, and some you take in the morning, some you take with meal. I
Mhm.
mean, there's just all kinds of stuff. But I think the other bottom line is getting to the base, like you said earlier on some, we were talking about the gut health is, instead of just throwing stuff at it to see what's going to help, is get a baseline and see, are you deficient in a vitamin or mineral? If you're not getting it and can't pump up your diet, then it may be okay. But and I'm guilty. I will say I was guilty of that, at one point, is just like, oh, well, I'm not getting all this stuff. So I'll just, probably doing it way too much. But when you get back to the basics, it just makes it much more simple. You're doing the right thing. And then, of course, like I said, the professional help to get some guidance.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think too, the other thing we just as human beings will think more is better. And
Yes.
that's not always
Yeah.
the case either.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
sometimes it's not healthy to get
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can, like some of the C's and D's, I think you probably just pass those through what I hear. But like, iron is one that I think you have to be very careful with. That one is that
Yeah.
you definitely don't want to step over the line. So
Mhm.
definitely there's some to, make sure. And that's the other thing. We have to be honest, because we always talk about our journeys is,
Mm.
and I use this in business a lot, is that, it's like you want to go to, Chicago, and it's like, okay, well, I want to go to Chicago. So I'm going to go out my front door and I'm going to turn to the west and start walking. Well, if you're in Nevada or somewhere, you're never going to get there. So it's just important to know and be honest with your healthcare practitioner, your dietitian. Be honest
Yeah.
about really where you are, and take all these supplements in and say, look, this is what I'm doing, and they can guide you, because it doesn't help to not put it all out there.
Yeah.
Katie,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm sorry, I don't mean to change the subject, but I know we're a little time constrained.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that you talked about Bariatric Nutrition Pro. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my background is I'm a registered dietitian, but I have worked with people going through bariatric surgery for gosh, 13 years now. And so I definitely come from the place of being able to just look at that compassionately and thoughtfully. And so I created Bariatric Nutrition Pro, and that's really for health professionals. Actually, is to make sure that there's a foundation of even just knowing surgery, talking about unique kind of troubleshooting and needs of someone going through surgery and the surgical process. So I definitely like to use that to teach professionals how to appropriately and compassionately approach nutrition with someone who has gone through bariatric surgery, approaching bariatric surgery, etc. And so, yeah, so I kind of have this couple of different hats that I wear. Not only working with clients one on one, and so that kind of covers, let's say, weight management, weight loss, also bariatric surgery, gut health, hormonal health. So that's kind of my gamut there. And then also at the same time, I'm a expert resource for professionals as well.
That's awesome. Well, and people just think, well, they've made the decision. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that bariatrics. Well, it's just not that. It's a huge lifestyle change.
Huge, huge, huge. And it's just, I know that decision wasn't made lightly either.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I love to just be someone's partner in kind of this whole health gaining surgery.
Yeah.
That's what I actually really like to call it, because yes, okay, weight and weight loss, and even you guys approaching weight and weight loss, but really you're trying to make health gains.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if someone's using a surgical intervention for that, like, okay, but we as practitioners, or, at least myself as a practitioner, I want to make sure that I know the ins and outs of that, so I can be the partner through that really, really big decision and that lifelong decision.
And I'm sure it helps so much just knowing that you don't have to do it alone. That has to be a huge relief.
Yeah. That's what I see actually with a lot of my clients that who are going through this. They'll reach out to me beforehand, oftentimes, and just say, like, I have so many questions, and I have so many, like, it's anxiety producing sometimes, and
Yeah.
I'll just be like, okay, all right, let's not get overwhelmed. We're going to take this one thing at a time. And I've seen probably at this point about 8,000 people go through surgery.
Wow.
So I know. So I also have a ton of experience of just like, you might feel this way, you might not. You heard this on the internet. It might be true, it might not. Like, and just kind of that real world aspect part of it.
And I know we are short on time. We are fixing to wrap this up, I promise. But the one thing, one reason I haven't ever stepped out to do that is because there's a mindset component too. I think that you really got to get your mind right, because I knew somebody that they did that, and we used to have there's a bunch of people from high school. We would all get together every month or so and just, sit around talking. And this person wouldn't actually eat much because she had some kind of a procedure. She wouldn't eat much, but she would drink 3 or 4 margaritas, and then she started gaining weight. And I started to be like, well, okay, there's about 1,200 calories in these drinks, and so you just had 3 of them. That's like 4,000 calories. It's a huge mindset change, because I guess the reality is that if you don't change your mind and you still continue the poor ways, you can hurt yourself even more.
And the alcohol does not kill the calories.
No.
Dang it.
No. I know. But you're exactly right. I mean, I think with all of this too, admittedly, like, there's such that mind component. And I definitely bring that into my work with my clients too. Because that's really, whatever we're doing, it's usually happening body wise, and we're not, brain is kind of a different part of the body, and it's gonna definitely message us in all different ways.
Oh, yeah.
The toughest 6 inches in life to conquer are the 6 between your ears.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So even when it comes to surgery, I sometimes will tell people, like, especially if I'm working with them for some time, I'll be like, maybe we should pause on surgery, and not meaning that it's a not ever,
Right.
but I want someone who's going through this big surgery, this big life altering thing, to really make sure that all the parts and pieces are in place.
Yes.
So it feels like a really great process, and not a really struggling, awful process.
Yeah. Because I guess the worst thing after going through that is to be not successful, or to struggle after the fact, is that, that's even worse than some of the struggles that we have. But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to wrap this up. We could keep talking for another hour. I know that you've got to go. Thank you so much for coming on.
Katie.
Y'all reach out to Katie, see how she can help. If it's just I'm going to let you say first, who do you like to work with regular? I know you said some things you did, but do you tend to want to work more with the bariatric patients, or just with anybody?
I can say, like, I definitely have a vast knowledge of bariatric nutrition. So I would say, for anyone who is on their weight loss journey, I am happy to work with you at any spots within that one. But then also at the same time too, if there is that, like, oh gosh, I internally am on the fence about bariatric surgery, then let's explore that a bit. Like, Definitely. And then also I'll say like the gut health and hormonal health, and we didn't even talk
We didn't
so
even
much
talk
about
about
hormones.
I was
Maybe,
Except
maybe another time. But
flamboyant.
you know, within that, if just something, you know, something's kind of curious or going on there, then yes, let's work together. And I would say my probably the best way to find me, I should mention that,
Yes.
is if you go to my website, which is katiechapmon.com. So KATIE, and then my last name, CHAPMON.com. You can schedule even just a quick kind of meet and greet call so we can find out from each other, like, hey, what's going on? And we can talk about, you know, next steps from there. That's probably
Okay.
the best way to do it.
All right, great. Yeah, always good to reach out, because the other thing we always suggest is, you know, when you're working with any professional, doesn't matter if it's a dietitian, doctor, CPA, lawyer, is that you have to make sure you have that connection that you really can trust, and you know, you want to follow their advice. So just reach out.
Katie is connectable.
That's
That's
right.
it. It's a new punchline.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. Terry, I'll send you money later for my new punchline. Thank you.
Yeah.
Notice freebie.
We'll include all that in the show notes as well. But we're going to let you go. One thing, if you could just tell us quickly, do you have is there a tool or a habit, something that you do in your daily life that just adds a lot of value?
You know, when we all kind of got shut down for the pandemic, I started this, and I can say this has been a game changer for me. Every morning when I wake up, I always I kind of mantra myself and say like, okay, you really, really deserve to have time for yourself, time for movement, and time for health.
Wow.
Because I think I kind of got in the zone of it was real hard. We all know that it was real hard for a while there.
Yeah.
And I needed for my mind to know like, oh yeah, okay. Like instead of getting bogged down with all the things, like you need to actually you're still important. You still need to do
I
that.
love that. Take time for yourself and take time for movement, because that's
And
one
health.
component that I have. Those are two things that I have missed out on or lost, you know, kind of lost in this whole thing. So get me recentered today. I appreciate it. Katie, thanks for taking time out of your day. Thanks for your patience. I know we had some technical difficulties, but we appreciate it. It's been awesome talking to you. That's going to do it for another episode of Feeding Fatty. Of course, I am Roy.
I'm Terry.
You can find us at www.feedingfatty.com. We're on all the major podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. We're on all the major social media platforms. Typically hang out more on Instagram than anywhere else. And there will be a video of this interview will go up when it goes live as well. So you can find that on YouTube. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your health.